So this is a pretty bold statement, America's greatest circus train, and I'm going to have to explain what that is. So I grew up in Baraboo, Wisconsin, and for 28 years, they sent a circus train out of Baraboo. So the Circus World Museum was formed in 1958 to preserve the history of circuses in America.
The circus train.
And they occupied some of the old Ringling Brothers buildings in Baraboo. The Ringling Brothers Circus started in Baraboo, Wisconsin. And from 1963 to 2000, no, 1965 to 2003, 28 times a train left Baraboo either to Milwaukee or Chicago to have the Great Circus Parade. Now, the Circus World Museum owns 2/3 of all known existing circus wagons in America. Huge collection, just, it's fabulous. They also have 42 historic circus railroad cars, which makes them larger, I'm guessing, than a lot of railroad museums in number of rolling stock that they have. So having all of these circus wagons, they thought they needed to get out to a larger audience from the people who would come and visit Baraboo. So the Circus World Museum would load up their wagons and by train, by rail, take them to Milwaukee 25 times and Chicago 3 times, and have a street parade with the wagons. Exceptionally big deal. And having grown up in Baraboo, I would have to be trackside to see these because it was spectacular. In the first 4 years, they had steam locomotives powering the circus train from Baraboo to Milwaukee.
I will turn it off when they're here.
So they've used Great Trunk Western 5629, which is the one you see here with Schlitz on the tender. They used the CB&Q 4960. That was Pacific, I think, and it stalled out one day. It wasn't really built for hauling freight. And then the Southern had 4501, also was used in the circus train one year, painted up in green and gold. It was pretty spectacular. Now I'm going to tell the story of how every year on my model railroad, on the anniversary of when the circus parade is normally around the 4th of July, I operate my model railroad like the prototype and run a circus train. But it all starts here at the Ringling Brothers railroad shops that was built in 1909. It's 64 feet wide and 574 feet long. The Circus World Museum owns it and they store all of their rolling stock in there. So sometime middle of June, they start pulling everything out and they need to repair it and get things ready for the circus train. So this is my model railroad. And as part of what they do is they pull everything out of the shops and they make repairs, but it's also, there's not roller bearing. It's all, they have to grease all the journals because it's all old time for the circus train. And they have a variety of rolling stock that's going to go on the circus. The car shops are down along the river. There's a pretty steep grade that comes off the northwestern line down into the shop area. And that little switcher that is owned by the Circus World Museum is not always capable of pushing anything up out of there. So Northwestern has to come down and pick up the rolling stock for the circus parade. and bring it to the main yard. When they get ready for the circus parade, they have to assemble all the equipment that's been pulled out of the shops, and that little switcher can do that in the shops, but the grade is too steep coming away from the shops along the river up to the main line through town. So Northwestern has to come out and rescue or bring the cars up this grade from the river. And so on my model road, I do the very same thing. I go down to the shops, pick up the cars and drag them across Baraboo. This is the passenger station that is still standing today, but it's going to be restored. It's all the windows are blocked up right now, but the Sauk County Historical Society has acquired it and is fundraising. It'll be quite a project. I've been on the inside and it's just a total wreck on the inside. Now, these particular railroad cars that you see were made by Walthers in the late 1980s, and they had the complete circus train. And just like the prototype, the Circus Museum cars are painted with different railroads on either side of the flat cars. So Walthers did an amazing job of making this set of circus cars. And the circus cars are dragged into the yard, and then we'll go back and get some more cars and bring them until they've taken all of the cars out of the shops and assembled them in the yard. Everybody still with me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Very nice.
Now, believe it or not, that passenger station in the background took me 10 years to build the thing. But a guy now is working on a 3D printed model of it. I do not know what the cost is going to be, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to replace what I have with what he's done. I've seen some opening pictures or some of it. It looks fabulous. It'll be a kit. But
There
just
was a guy at the Red River RPM in Forest City or Forest Hill, Texas, the other day, who had a 3D printed model of the Rock Island passenger station in Fairbury, Nebraska. It was really nice.
the particular fella, Matt Wilkie, lives in Baraboo, and he has Circus City Printing. They print decals, but he also 3D prints things and does fabulous work. He grew up in Baraboo, so he models the same things that I do. Here's the prototype, and they've gone down. Now they've pulled the passenger cars that will make up the circus train, and they're pushing them back into the yard. You can see this is the condition of the passenger depot today. When it was stopped being used in 1963, it was sold as a warehouse, and they blocked everything in, which preserved the building, but in order to get it restored, it's going to take a lot of work. So here's the same thing on my model railroad, where again, these are the Walthers cars, fabulously detailed and correct. So once everything gets assembled, pulled out of the shops and brought into the yard, then it's time. The flat cars are pulled and they're pushed into siding down along the Baraboo Freight House, getting ready to load the circus cars. And so the cars are in place now. They put up the ramps. And they start bringing the circus cars behind the freight house, and across the road is the back gate to the Circus World Museum. So it's an easy haul, and this one Caterpillar tractor, they use to haul them up. Then they'll load with horses later. The tractor was a Viking kit, but the Circus City printers makes 3D prints the necessary parts to make it match the actual cat that's used on the circus train. Here I'm showing the Mack chain driven truck pulling it up, cars up, which does happen sometimes. But most of the time it's horses, although the Mack truck is pulling up onto the flat car here and dragging some stuff.
Looking for.
It's just quite fast to see them handle it in the same manner that they did more than 100 years ago, loading a circus train with horses. So here's an assembled string of cars, and now they'll pull these cars out, put them back in the yard, and put it in another string of cars and proceed to load another 5 cars with Circus. This particular car is the last car, Clyde Beatty car. It's we call it the gas car because it contains everything that has to be unloaded first. So that's a generator set there in that one car, and then the Caterpillar tractor, the Mack truck. So those will be the first things that'll be unloaded once they get to Milwaukee. So they've got power for lights, other uses, then they'll start pulling off the cars. The prototype, that's the same thing. That's the gas car in front. They crammed a few more things in, which they usually do. So once they've got all of the flat cars loaded in the yard, then they're ready to go. The next day, they'll put the train together. Now, a bunch of these cars that you see on here, some of them are Walther's kits. Other ones are 3D printed ones by the Circus City decals. And they're just fabulous, the 3D printed kits with matching decals. Very correct.
Mark, are these still available?
So for instance, starting at the left, there's on that Gomer Brothers, that is the giraffe wagon that's available. America is available. Then we got to skip over to the orange Hagen Wallace. That's 3D printed, that's available. Then over the Mighty Hog Show, there's the Asia wagon. And then finally a ticket wagon. Those are all 3D printed and available through Circus City Printing.
How about a publicity car?
So you're talking about the passenger car in the back?
I guess.
Those Walthers, there were 3 cars that they made. And I do see them on eBay still, but Walthers, it was a one-off deal. They made this whole circus train, including a passenger steam locomotive to go with it, but never been reproduced again, made again.
If I remember correctly, the passenger cars were River Rossi, and the steam locomotive was it was a brass locomotive with a cast metal tender or something.
Wasn't that what Overland Power or somebody like that did that combo of brass and plastic?
Oriental.
Oriental, yes, Oriental Power.
Yeah, the Iron Horse series or something like that.
Well,
Yep.
the one I'm thinking of, it had a Schlitz tender. I don't think it was Powerhouse. That was the Oriental brand of their die-cast locomotives. I don't
you're
know,
right.
it's too many years ago.
Yeah. I don't know if those are available on eBay or not, but you're right, the passenger cars are Riverosi that were painted to look like the ones used in the actual circus train. And we'll see some pictures of those cars. So now the switcher is putting together the train, pulling all of the cars and assembling them into the train they'll be leaving. And here's the prototype in Baraboo doing the same thing. And at the head of the train, they've got the stock cars. And in the actual circus train, they hauled horses to Milwaukee. They needed dozens and dozens of horses, but they would haul some of them to unload the train at the other end and also participate in the actual parade itself. But they needed, other horses were brought in from states all over to fill out the Great Circus Parade. And we're taking the second set of cars, sticking those into the train. Now that the two-headed dragon car is my favorite, and I was amazed that that is available in 3D printed. It's something you could never hope to make yourself. And there's the gas car, the last one, and now they'll attach the passenger cars to it because the generator will actually provide power to the passenger cars. And you can see that here in the actual train. They've got the generator set next to the passenger cars.
Mark, going back to the horse cars, did they have them?
Yeah.
Did they have them close to the front to kind of lessen the slack action on the horses?
Exactly. Those would be the first cars. And at least in the beginning, they used to put the passenger cars at the end of the train, but they found out there was too much slack. And in later trains, they rode at the front with the horses, and they had this specially painted caboose that would go at the end of the flat cars. But you're right, the slack was pretty bad in these cars. Now, ahead of the observation car, that white car is a Milwaukee Road baggage car. The doors were blocked in and they cut windows out. So it's actually an open air car. There are two of them that Circus World Museum built and used. And I was always hoping that someday I could ride the train to Milwaukee, even if it meant that I had to shovel elephant manure. It would be worth it. Now we've got all the cars in the train. We're ready to go. This is 1984. It was led by SD40-2 is in the picture. This is 1971 or 72. They used whatever the newest motive power was. Northwestern would show it off on the circus train. In this particular year, they had it decorated up with lots of flags. Okay, I guess that's all my slides on the circus train and how I model it once a year. And I put it all back away, ran the train in reverse, dismantled it, unloaded the wagons. And next year, 4th of July, I'll do the same again, just to relive it and maybe do a different year and use different motive power. Any questions?
These aren't questions, Mark, but the train looks really nice. Thanks for showing it to us. If you're into looking on eBay, there was a line of circus wagons made by an outfit called Wardy J back in the 60s. And it might be that wagons that weren't done by Walthers or by your 3D printing outfit were offered by Wardy J. They were pretty simple kits, however, but I think they had the correct decals.
Okay.
Simmons was, yeah, Simmons was another company, and you have some of those.
Yeah, I have some of the ones too. Those were wood. And they're nice, but I really like these 3D printed ones. And some of the wagons you saw were part of the Walters Circus train. And they had convinced Jordan to make some of these steam calliopes. There was a pair of those different styles. And the Mack truck was also a Jordan kit too, with some extra
Yeah,
parts.
Jordan, they had another truck too. There was there was a Cannon, the shoot the guy, I don't know who made that. And then there was one with a small, not a calliope, I don't think, maybe it was in a truck. That was a Jordan. I have one of those. And I have a number of Circus stuff.
So I'm hoping to get more of these 3D printed cars, and I've got lots. I think there's 7 flat cars. I don't have enough. You can get roughly 4 wagons for the flat car, so I don't begin to have enough to make the whole circus train, but that is a goal someday.
For
Okay,
those of
well-
you. Go ahead, Ron.
I just gonna say, I guess if we're done, why, I thank you, Mark. And if there's some more comments, we still got a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, if you ever get a chance, and I'm sure you watched the movie, The Greatest Show on Earth. I just watched it last night well, I watch it at least once a month because it makes me happy. But it just shows the railroad side of it pretty good. Shows the loading and the unloading and stuff and the setup of the circus. And it's more of a documentary. If you look at it as a documentary, it's a great documentary. And it's on, some of it's on streaming, some of it's not. But I bought my disc off of Amazon, I think for $6.
Mark,
The other
this is
movie
Ro-
you see,
Mark,
and it's actually where the Circus Museum got most of these wagons, is a Walt Disney picture called Toby Tyler.
Exactly, yes.
Mark, this is Rod Thompson. I have a question. When I was doing research for my own railroad, it went through Darlington, Wisconsin.
Okay,
And
yeah.
And I came across an item that they take credit for the very, very first circus acts, in that they had bought a camel and an elephant, and that guy sold it to the Ringling Brothers, and that was the very, very beginning of a circus. I was wondering, have you ever run across that discussion that Darlington, Wisconsin was really the origin of circuses?
Well, Delavan, Wisconsin gets a lot of credit because there were some circuses out of there. The Ringling Brothers started out as a horse-drawn show, so they could only travel to the counties immediately around them until they became a railroad circus.
But
Yeah, I have several books. Was a number of circuses before Ringling. If you're interested, why, we can dig into it. I probably
I'm
got
I'll
six
from
or eight.
Philadelphia.
I'll go back and see if I can find that research, but it was something in Darlington, Wisconsin. Just was taking credit for the very first concept of that kind of a display. And I always questioned it. I mean, Darlington's way back in the far southwest woods.
The first Ringling Brother production wasn't much to talk about. It was a couple of brothers and their wives, and it was more of a singing magic instrumentation show rather than, they didn't have animals to show. That all came later. But they were considered very wholesome, the Ringling Brothers, as opposed to Barnum, who liked to have, shrunken heads, and the lady that was half pig and, whatever, that wasn't the Ringling Brothers style. It was a family oriented program.
Then were those the two major competitors, Barnum Bailey and Ringling Brothers?
Oh, no. There's thousands of them. hundreds that were that actually amounted to something. The next biggest one was in Indiana, down at Peru, the Hagenbach and Wallace Circus. Of course, everything was bought up by, what is the American, what is it, Mark? American something,
Yeah, American
which became
shows.
Ringling.
But the Ringling Brothers did buy into Barnum and Bailey, or bought them out. Barnum was getting old and Bailey was tired of. So in 1918, the shows merged and they left Baraboo for the last time in the spring of 1918. And because World War I was on, there were limitations as to the availability of locomotives to pull the circus train. So they never came back to Baraboo. They went back to Bridgeport, Connecticut, to Barnum and Bailey's winter home. And then eventually John Ringling bought land in Sarasota, Florida, and they wintered there, which seemed much more reasonable if you had elephants and camels than Wisconsin.
Mark, have you been down to the Ringling in Sarasota?
I have been there. The mansion's fabulous. Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I've got,
well, the painting collection is bizarre.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah.
I mean, if you're not used to something or not expecting something like that, boy, I'll tell you, even a straight-laced person would just kind of go cringing. It's somewhat dark.
I've been to Sarasota. If you've never been to Peru, I don't know whether they continue it, but they had up until very recently, a circus parade every year. Now that may be
Oh,
over.
they have
I
big
don't know.
circus day.
I
They
don't
have
know.
big circus day. I've been down there quite a few times. It's pretty big.
The museum they have down there at the old Hagenbach, that I don't know how that's doing. Have you been out there?
I've never been to
Not
Peru.
recent.
I know the museum in town, which is a general museum, does have quite a bit of circus information.
But
Yeah,
Peru
the
was a very
Circus Hall of
big
Fame
town.
is also the Circus Hall of Fame is also at Peru, and every time I've gone to it, it's been closed. And they've got twin hemisphere too, and I really want to, or two hemisphere, and I really want to get a model of that. That's nice. So maybe when that comes out in 3D, I'll get one.
I'm waiting for it too.
The lead one that's out there is just horrible.
But you're right, Ron. Peru has got quite a tradition, and besides the circuses, there were carnivals that traveled by rail. Then there were also all the Western shows, Tom Mix, Buffalo Bill, etc. They all were on rails too.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with the Royal American Carnival studying it, and I made up a train of that. I gave up the circus and went to Carnival train. So I guess I'll have to do something with that. Maybe we can look at that one of these nights.
That'd be great.
You know, AHM made a whole bunch of passenger cars with the Royal American Carnival. Am I saying that right? I think so. Anyway, is there anything else? Okay, well, I guess Greg will tell us if there's something next week. If anybody has something, why give Greg or I a email, and if I get excited, I'll get the carnival thing out.
All right, good night.
So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Right.